Comparison price for Friday, June 20th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Well Center. And this show, a presentation of Bet365. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. Big show heading into the weekend and the summer solstice. Longest day of the year. You could tee off at like 5:30 tonight and still get the round in.
Yeah. Probably could.
You have to play a little quicker, but, 5, you're good.
Oh, playing
4:30.
Playing quick golf in Vancouver. So easy.
Oh, so easy.
When 4-hour rounds were a thing. Oh, my gosh. Not so much anymore. You got nowhere to get back to. You got to drive people to practice and stuff.
I'm even lingering now for a post-round beer.
Oh, wow.
But I'm starting to hear it a little bit at home since I'm always alone. Anyways, welcome to the summer, everybody. Can't wait. And it's going to be a big one. And it dovetails with the NHL offseason, which is underway. So many names, so much to get into here in a moment. But we'll start with our Whistler Golf Club poll question. Will Jonathan Lekkerimäki be a full-time NHLer next season? You can vote yes, you can vote no. Do so at the Sekeres Price X and YouTube channels. First word often goes to Blake Price.
The answer is will, so it's a predictive thing, and I'm going to say no. I'm going to say they just don't feel like they can trust a kid to carry the offensive load, and they have an offensive load that needs carrying. And so full-time, no. I think he gets his looks. I think he plays NHL games this year, but I'm going to say no to full-time, despite some great poise last night.
I'm voting yes for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Oh!
After a trade for Brian Rust.
Hey, you're all over the Rust trade.
They go back to the well that they know, Pittsburgh, right? Pittsburgh players they know. Mm-hmm. He's got 3 years left of term, so they're able to justify it.
Okay.
I'm being a little bit facetious, although I can see something like that. I'm being a little cheeky. But here's the thing, and we're going to get into this over the course of the program. We have talked about how competitive it is going to be for NHL roster players, especially higher-end NHL roster players in a summer where everybody has cap space, or most teams have cap space. So, look, there was a world for me where Jonathan Lekkerimäki was going to have to be a top 6 player for the Vancouver Canucks next year anyways. And if there's any degree of striking out on the 3 top 6 forwards, or at the very least middle to top 6 forwards that Jim Rutherford wants to get, then yeah, I see Jonathan Lekkerimäki in the lineup next year. And I see him in the lineup most nights. Full-time, you can define full-time as you see fit.
60 plus.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say 50, but yeah.
But do they find room for both Linus Karlsson and Lekkerimäki to be full-time players? Like, is that the kind of team that you want?
Well, Karlsson in the bottom 6.
Is that the kind of team that Jim Rutherford wants to put on
Probably
the ice?
not, but we'll see.
It would be really nice to have contributing players on ELCs again on the forward set.
It would. But, hear me out here. You're going Elias Pettersson with Jake DeBrusk, and let's just put Connor Garland there for a second, okay? You're got new addition.
New guy, yeah. There's at least one new guy.
New addition 2C, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's put. Do you want to put Chytil on the wing there? Or do you want to? Okay, so let's put Philip Chytil on the wing there. You want to put Nils Höglander on the other wing, or do you want to put new addition there?
New addition there.
2 new additions and Chytil. Yeah. So then we're looking at it as what? We're either Bluger or Ratu as our third line.
I would put Ratu.
Okay, so we got Ratu there with Dakota Joshua and Nils Höglander.
Yeah.
Then or Sherwood. You want to put Sherwood there?
No, I want Sherwood on the fourth line.
Okay, so you're Sherwood with O'Connor and whoever, Bluger, Ratu. And then you're Linus Karlsson and Jonathan Lekkerimäki, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're a Nils Oman guy.
Nope.
Right?
No longer.
And let's face it, at any point in the season, you're probably going to have a forward or two who's out with injury. So those guys are going to wind up playing a lot, even with two new additions.
Yeah.
Is that
okay.
in the realm?
If they get two new additions.
That's in the realm.
The opportunities for these creative acquisitions are diminishing by the day in the National Hockey League. So we will see if they're able to find the guys that they need.
Mm-hmm.
One potential target off the board today as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's going to be the case every day now, between now and, I would be surprised if a day goes by here between now and the draft next Friday where there aren't options that come off the board for the Vancouver Canucks as teams go about re-signing their own guys or making trades.
Mm-hmm.
This is life. This is the NHL. This is how it works. And let's face it, most GMs in the NHL are conservative. Most GMs in the NHL play it safe. They don't want to be out there making risky moves. Also, many abide by the credo that you know more about the player in-house than you do about the player that you're looking to get from outside of the house. So if things are equal or if you have any question marks, uncertainty, just re-sign the guy you have.
Yeah.
Eric Tulsky, Jeff Merrick always tells the story that, Eric Tulsky in Carolina, part of the job is the challenge of figuring out who to get as opposed to just re-signing your own guys. But I think you're going to see a lot of re-signing the own guys, particularly if they're willing to give even small hometown discounts. Because I think there's a lot of general managers who are scared shitless at the price tags on July 1st. And I think they have a right to be. I don't envy them. I think it is going to be bonanza spending on July 1st. We had joked about some of the Leafs, David Boland, David Clarkson, Jeff Finger, like some of the huge contracts that have been given out on July 1st by teams that feel such a desperate need to get better. And I think you're going to see that on Canada Day.
Cam Robinson literally just tweeted out, I'm told to watch out for CBJ over the next 5 to 7 days. They could package both first-rounders to move up. They could package both first-rounders for a move-the-needle roster player. They are 7-11 open for business. 7-11 doesn't seem like it's appropriate anymore. Just 24 hours.
Mm-hmm. And Columbus holds the 14th overall pick in the draft, and they hold the 20th overall pick in the draft. So they have better draft currency than the Vancouver Canucks, and that's not even to talk about their prospect pool or their NHL roster that they may draw from to make these additions. It's a lot of teams like that.
Yeah.
This is the fruit of trading out the number of draft picks the Vancouver Canucks have traded out over the years in desperate attempts to just get into the playoffs. So we'll see where this goes. And we're going to get into it here in the show. But while I am in one part outraged that we're considering Filip Chytil as second-line center after what Jim Rutherford said at his end-of-season media availability, there's also another part of me that understands it a little bit just because when I put myself in Jimmy's shoes or Patrick Allvin's shoes, this is going to be really, really difficult. The Daily Poll question brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Designed Whistler Golf Club, now taking bookings for any time during the 2025 season, and the prime times are filling up fast now. Everybody, the school's getting out now. People are making their summer plans. You want to play golf at the Whistler Golf Club, get on that quickly. And whether you're golfing or just visiting Whistler, go check out Palmer's Gallery Bar and Grill. It overlooks the 18th green. Blake and I have had post-round beers there and seen just bears amble by like they own the place. You remember that? We're just sitting there one day having a sandwich and a beer. Next thing you know, there's a bear just walking across the 18th fairway. Oh, yeah. Across the first fairway.
Here's the thing to remember, too, about that patio is that in the heat of the summer, it can get quite hot.
Indeed.
There's ample shade on that patio as well. So.
And it's home of Whistler's Best Burger and awesome local beer. Check it out. If you have a group of 12 or more, tell us about your group. WhistlerGolf.com/groups. Top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Turned down and turning inwards. The Canucks' offer to land a top 2 center was rebuffed, and now they're preparing to go forward with Filip Chytil as second-line center. Start with the offer turned down. The Athletics' Mike Russo in Minnesota reporting the Canucks offered the Wild the 15th overall selection in this draft and a player for center Marco Rossi, and were rejected. It is not clear who that player was, whether it was a prospect, whether it was an NHL pro. Thomas Drance of The Athletic reporting that DPD Elias Paterson and Tom Wielander are mostly untouchable for this Canucks front office. Victor Mancini, Sawyer Minio more available. He also points out that Rutherford has a history of adding volume to trades to compensate for a relative lack of quality. Take a look at the Elias Lindholm trade with Calgary. Right, it was Kuzmenko, but then it was Brestevich, then it was a pick. He did that in Pittsburgh as well, where he would load up trades with volume to get the guy he wanted. Bill Guerin, the Minnesota GM, is after roster players. They're trying to get over the first-round hump. They have the huge dead cap money previously belonging to Zach Parise and Ryan Suter that is no longer on their books. And so they're looking to take the next step towards contention. But there is speculation out there that Guerin may have to settle for futures, as many in the league have the same size concerns that he does for the 5'9" Marco Rossi as a top 2 center. So the bottom line here is Rossi could still happen for the Canucks, Blake. Game of chicken here. Do they improve their offer? Do they just let the offer stand? And if Guerin can't do better, maybe he circles back.
There's so much along the spectrum in terms of what the Vancouver Canucks can offer. And obviously, like, I don't deny the reporting that there has been an offer turned down, but find me a trade in which that wasn't always the case. Who's accepting the first offer, trade offer that you get when it's not the 11th hour? And even then, you probably don't. So, sure, the first offer turned down, fine. Back to the drawing board, and you elevate what the prospect is that you've probably attached to that 15th pick. And you elevate, and you might get to roster players like a Nils Höglander eventually. Maybe it goes as far as a Connor Garland. But the question is how do they view a guy like a Lekkerimäki, for instance, like a Victor Mancini? Are those roster players or are those prospects? Because both of them are knocking on the door to be everyday players, hence our poll question. So if that's a worthwhile debate to be had at the Vancouver Canucks level, it would certainly be a worthwhile debate over there as well. And they get a ton of cap space. Because remember, Marco Rossi is a restricted free agent right now. They're going to have to pay to get him in the lineup. Millions. They get a guy in an ELC. All of a sudden, they've got those millions they were going to allocate to Marco Rossi. They can spend that elsewhere, and they potentially might get the production of Lekkerimäki anyway. So you never know.
This for me, if the reporting is correct, that there are a number of teams out there that have the same concerns that Guerin does about the size, and thus are not either in the game or are offering less than they would have if Marco Rossi was 6 foot and 200 pounds. If that is correct, Blake, this is still pathway A for me in the Vancouver Canucks. Okay, 15th overall and the player didn't get it done. Improve the player.
Yeah.
Or maybe add a third asset, something like that, as you just outlined. Because this swims upstream in comparison to what I think is going to be the case for a lot of other players who are out there on the trade market.
There's a lot of hope involved in a lot of the other possibilities for the Vancouver Canucks.
But there's also more suitors, I think, or should be theoretically more suitors. Like when the Montreal Canadiens, a franchise that has always prioritized skill and skill over size in a lot of cases, when you hear that the Montreal Canadiens are sort of coolish on Rossi, one of the teams hunting a second-line center, and there are many out there, as we've chronicled over the last few weeks. Boy, for me, that's opportunity for the Canucks if they're willing. If they have less problem or no problem with Rossi's size. Let those other teams that are looking for something that's a little more perfect as a player, let them go fight it out for the other guys.
Yeah.
Let's stay focused on this guy and see if we can land him. Meanwhile, with two potential UFA center options off the board, and Matt Duchene and Ryan Donato re-signing respectively in Dallas and Chicago, and Sam Bennett declaring on day 2 of the Florida Panthers Stanley Cup celebration / stupor, he's, quote, not effing leaving Florida. Drance is reporting the Canucks are, quote, prepared to make peace with the notion of utilizing Chytil as their second-line center, as well as considering pivots and contingency plans. Dhaliwal says they've reconnected with Pius Suter's camp. Blake, are we saying a white flag waved week and a half before free agency?
No, not at all. I don't think there's
this is posturing.
Posturing. I think I think Drance's source is trying to make sure that it's out there so that they appear a little less desperate. I don't think for a second the Jim Rutherford, Patrick Allvin march out on July 5th or whenever they want to have a presser to wrap it all up. Certainly not, they don't want to come out on September 28th at the start of training camp and say, yes, we think Philip Chytil, our second line center, is going to lead us to great places. They can't. No chance. No chance.
After what Rutherford said in that end of season media availability, it will be expensive, but it will also be very expensive not to get one. Will be open to do whatever it takes.
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes...
I mean, that was April, everybody. That was 2 months ago. If you're already pivoting to the idea that Chytil and his concussion history is coming back as second-line center, and now we have to go out and re-sign Pius Suter, ooh. And like you see it every single day now on social media, the anything between dissatisfaction and rage of Canucks fans, and a lack of faith now in this management group. They had so much equity built up with this fan base, Blake. And if they're forced to make moves that are at best, stand pat, bring guys back and hope to incrementally improve, I shudder to think what your season ticket renewals are going to look like, and the climate, the atmosphere around this team in October when it gets going for real again.
And I had thought for a moment that maybe offer sheets were a road that they could go down, but now
your own picks.
The options for that are pretty limited. Now, there was still one available because he was going to come cheaper than a guy like Marco Rossi. But Maverick Bourque just signed with the Dallas Stars today, and that would have been a bit of a hope as a second-line center because he's a 30-point guy right now, but he's 23. Mm-hmm. They could have given he just signed for $950K, they could have offer sheeted him at at $2.8 million, triple that, and is only a second-round
pick. Yeah. Since you mentioned it, Mason Marchment traded from the Dallas Stars to the Seattle Kraken. A winger goes for a 3rd and 4th round pick. Is this opportunity lost for the Vancouver Canucks? Now, he's slow.
Yeah.
And although 2 of their slower forwards, Besser and Suter, are likely gone. We'll see about Suter now after this report. So I'm not sure if he would have fit from a speed point of view if they're hell-bent on being a faster hockey club.
But he's way cheaper at 5.
Well, I mean, he's a good player. This was mostly a cap dump from Dallas. We had talked about it yesterday.
It's a free taste
you
test.
You have to take advantage of some situations. Cap dumps, you're going to probably have to take some risks, some big swings, some reclamation projects.
And there's not a lot of risk involved because he's only got the 1 year left.
Yeah. As for Dallas, yes, that was the salary dump trade. This after they re-signed Matt Duchene earlier in the week. They also want to re-sign Victoria's Jamie Benn, and they didn't want to be susceptible to a Maverick Bourque offer sheet. There was an interesting story about Bourque. Jim Nill wanted Pete DeBoer to play him in a more frontline role at some point this season because he wanted to know what kind of player he had there, both in terms of deadline planning. Did he need extra forwards? Is Maverick Bourque a trade piece? And, of course, into the summer, can we pencil this guy in to be one of our 12 forwards next year? DeBoer was a little reticent. I think that's where some of the friction started between the Dallas GM and the Dallas head coach, and, of course, now the former Dallas head coach. I'll say this. I like it from a Seattle Kraken point of view. They have made a lot of picks. They have a number of prospects in their pipeline. They are looking to take the next step and be better, and this guy makes them better. They still, for my money, have a pretty deep forward group, even if they're missing the top end guys. So Seattle got better yesterday in the division. Of that, there's no doubt. As for Suter, I've been a long-standing Pius Suter fan. I have long lobbied for the Canucks to re-sign him. I am willing to pay here because of the dearth of centers on the market, UFA market. I'm willing to go to $4.5 million. I'm even willing to go to $5 million if the term is lower.
What's the term lower mean for you? 5x4?
Yep. If I have to, if I feel like the price of trading for a center is going to be outlandish, if I feel the price of signing a free agent is going to be outlandish, and I'm leaning that way on both scores, then I would buck up a little more for a player I know, a versatile chess piece who can play center, can play the wing, who kills penalties, was one of your primary penalty killers on an excellent PK unit last year. I know he's not a great skater. He's probably coming off a career year in goal scoring, but he is a dependable, reliable, all situations player. Yeah, you wish he skated faster. Yeah, you wish he was a little bigger. But again, we have crossed the bridge of imperfect players. We know we're not going to be out there shopping only from the superstar line. So, yes, I would consider him in a large way at those terms.
I think 5x5 is out there for him.
Do you think 5x5 is out there? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. He just turned 29, remember? So, like a 4-year deal, he's finishing the contract.
Yeah, 5 years is sort of where I want to get out of it because I don't want to be creeping towards 35.
Do you think you can get the $20 million over 5 years, though? $4 million cap hit, 5-year deal.
I think that's
it's the same $20 million, but
yeah.
Like, is he really signing for a lot of money at the age of 32, 33?
Probably not, and I think that's probably going to be why he wants as much term as possible here.
4.25 over 5, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're in the right neighborhood.
Like, maybe you get the cap hit down if you add the 5th year.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm hoping. Yeah. Like, if I go 5 at 4.5, is that enough for Pius Suter?
I think that would get it done domestically.
Yeah.
I think he stays for that. 5
at 4.5 or 5.
Because he probably gets 5x5 in the open market.
4.5 at 5 or 5 at 4. Those are comfortable. I'm comfortable with those numbers for Pius Suter. Yes, I am. But I'm a big fan. And if people want to quibble with me, I get it. Frank Saravelli says the Canucks are one of the teams in the mix for Buffalo winger JJ Peterka. It's a long list. He name checks the Islanders, the Rangers, the Blackhawks, Tampa Bay also involved on JJ Peterka. Be listening to Jeff Merrick coming up here. Be watching Jeff Merrick coming up here. He's got an interesting idea there. But he's going to be expensive. Sabres want a top 4 right shot D back. I mean, I don't think he can afford to move Chytil in this move, right? That's too much of a rob from your defensive prowess. Mancini sure as hell ain't getting it done. Marcus Pettersson's not a right side D. So that one I'm having a little more trouble with, particularly because, Buffalo's not looking to continue to add young players. Like, they want to be a thing next year and improve their lot in life. And, of course, they'll be subtracting one of their better forwards. So that one is tough for me. I can understand why the Canucks are interested, but he's not a center. That's where you got to prioritize, and I'm just not sure you have the assets and wherewithal to get that one done. I kind of view that situation as Jason Robertson light. Fantastic player, would be an amazing fit here, but what are you going to have to give up? And then once you're done that, what do you have left over
to
go and fill your other needs, and particularly your biggest need at center?
How about Höglander and Lekkerimäki for Peterka? They get.
I mean, that's not the ask.
But they get a replacement National Hockey League winger in Höglander, who very well might goal for goal replace what Peterka did.
Yeah, that's a big ask,
but certainly between the two guys, you're replacing the goals of Peterka, and you might get two wingers out of it.
He had 27 last year. He had 28 the year before. He's 23. He's played 3 NHL seasons. I mean.
Oh, we know where he's projected to be.
I mean, that's it, Blake. Is like, I think you're looking at a 30 to 35 goal winger here going forward.
Yeah, and
maybe
of course
even more.
Höglander is just 24.
Yeah,
and a year ago he was celebrating a 24-goal season. It's not too far removed from where Peterka is at. So, and so the punishment for an off year for Höglander is Lekkerimäki, which to me seems pretty fair.
Yeah. I mean, if they're willing to take wingers, again, the reports are out there. They want a top 4 right shot D, but okay. And amid other players on the block, Saravelli saying that Anaheim doesn't want to trade Zegras at low value. I get that, but I'm also you're almost in jail with the player though if you're Anaheim, and particularly if your GM Pat Verbeek doesn't fancy him, which we know, and if your new head coach, Joel Quenneville, doesn't fancy him, and we'll see about that. But you're kind of in jail with the player because he's getting $5.75 million this year, and he's an RFA with Arbrights next year. So you've got to find a team that's willing to bet on a rebound, willing to accept the fact that there are some black marks on the resume there in terms of being a one-dimensional player, being a soft skill player, and not necessarily being the best room guy. And you're paying a market plus value with the idea that he's going to, with the notion, certainly from his camp, that he's going to make more than that going forward. So I don't know. Like I was under the impression when we were talking about Zegras earlier in the week, like this could be a player secured for lower trade cost, kind of like the discussion around Evander Kane, because the contractual situation and the current fit with his current team. I suspect this could be Anaheim just trying to message out there and trying to not have their weakness out there laid bare for everybody on Zegras, but that's going to be a tough deal to make for Verbeek. I mean, maybe there's a GM or a head coach out there that is a huge Trevor Zegras believer and is willing to give the market value of what Zegras was as opposed to what he has been more recently. But I would be a little surprised by that.
I still think the trading of players that have some level of stink on them is going to be a value play for the acquiring teams this year. And I put Mason Marchment into that group in that he is older, slower, and on the last year of his deal, and maybe making more than most teams would feel comfortable with that are trying to create cap space. I think there's going to be a few more of those deals. I mean, there's not going to be 12 more of them, but I think there's more deals where you think, hey, that's a fair deal. And the Mason Marchment deal was a fair deal. Erik Haula was much less of a impact player, but there was nothing crazy about that Erik Haula deal. There's trades like that are going to happen, and the Canucks need to be one of those teams. Mm-hmm. They need to have one of those value trades where, hey, you're not going to rush out and grab that player's jersey the minute that trade happens.
Right.
But there's a value deal for a decent player out there in a trade that the Vancouver Canucks need to make because other teams are already making them.
Mm-hmm. And lastly here, before we move on to a most interesting comment from Connor McDavid and the Abbotsford Canucks, David Piniota, the fourth period, reporting. So Brian Rust is available in Pittsburgh because that is the one declared seller outside of Sydney and Malkin, although I do wonder about Malkin now that his camp has been informed that, we're not re-signing you. This is your last year in Pittsburgh. Whether he wants to get to next a little sooner and maybe do some winning this year. But Rust, who is available, 33 years old, he's got a new no-move clause, but it expires July 1st. So really, if you're the player and the agent, you're already in territory where it's effectively a toothless no-move right now. I mean, I suppose you can play hardball till July 1st, but then they can send you anywhere. So,
yeah.
Maybe Pittsburgh is right now working with the player going, okay, well, the market is completely open on July 1st, but we have interest here, there, and there. Do you like those markets? Because we'll work to get you there now before your no move expires. He's got 3 more years left at $5.125 million. He was 21 goals, 65 points last year. And again, importantly here, he is known to Rutherford and Alvin.
Mm-hmm.
And they have gone shopping in the Pittsburgh Isle in the past.
Yep.
So that's why when I look at this Canucks situation, who's attainable, who isn't attainable, particularly given the assets you have to peddle or willing to peddle or simply don't have in some cases with the bigger trades, I think this guy checks a lot of boxes.
With the stats he put up
Top
last year.
Top 6 winger, attainable, known to them.
His goal per game rate in the last 2 years is through the roof. Like it's well into the 30-goal pace. Well into. 31 and 71 this past year, 28 and 62 the year before that. We're talking about like 35-goal paces here the last 2 years. The problem is he just turned 33, and he has 3 more years left. Like I don't know what wins out here, the fact he's coming off 2 great seasons or the fact that he's a 33-year-old with 3 years left, because those are 2 different players.
I would be very, very daunted by the age here.
Yeah.
Because there is fall off the table capacity.
Because name me the top skill that Brian Rust brings to the table.
Well, he's a good skater.
He's a good skater, but he's not all world. Like he's
been a consistent scorer, Blake, too. That's the other thing. So,
but he's not noted for his explosive shot. He's not noted for his crazy speed. He's a good player. But I'm just saying, you're not leaning on something sticking around for a long time that you can bank on.
You're correct. You're leaning on a guy who's got 6 consecutive 20-goal seasons, including a high of 31 last year.
Yeah.
You're banking on this being a consistent producer, even when he misses games. He's got seasons of 55, 56, 60, and 62.
Still getting to 20 goals,
and still gets to 20 goals.
In most cases, 25.
Yeah. So...
well, availability for that matter has not been great, as you just outlined.
And clearly 31 and 71 last year.
Yeah.
So he may have been a 35-goaler scorer last year if he gets even. So, look, again, to me, when I put myself in their shoes, he checks a lot of boxes. He can play in our top 6. We know him. There's not going to be any kind of mystery or discovery that we have to go through.
But I'm going to guess that Dubas looks at that as hey, this is a player I can sell.
Yep.
Versus, if I'm the Canucks, I'm thinking, am I doing you a favor here, getting you out of jail of not so much this coming year, but then 2 after that? Am I doing you a favor here?
I think that's going to be the calculation for every Suter on the Rust file, not to mention for Kyle Dubas in Pittsburgh. I think Rust is absolutely being moved here. We know which direction Pittsburgh is going in.
Yeah.
And especially if you're not willing to move Crosby and Malkin, it's going to be hard to jumpstart the rebuild. They are looking to move Erik Karlsson as well.
Who scores more goals in the next 3 years, Brock Besser or Brian Rust?
I'd probably put my money on Besser because of his age versus Rust's.
Yeah.
But next year, I think Rust is just as likely or more. to outscore Besser.
At a cap hit that could be 3 to maybe 4, but probably 3 for sure, million less.
That's right. And with better wheels.
Now, it's not a free agent signing. Again, you're
you're
giving up
have
assets.
to give something up.
So what is that number for that player? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, put it this way. If you don't want to trade Wielander, I think Rust either costs you Lekkerimäki or the 15th overall, Blake.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
Or Mancini and others. Mancini's an interesting one in terms of his trade market value because I think he has fans throughout the league.
Yeah.
In fact, I think he has some big fans throughout the league. I think there are teams, scouts, GMs who believe he can be a second pair right shot defenseman. I think there are others who believe that might be a bit of a reach, but he is absolutely a third pair right side defenseman and a higher end one, a good one, a guy who can skate, a guy who can move the puck. And then I think there are others who, at the very least, will portray, this isn't even yet an NHL player. So he's a difficult calculation for me in terms of his value on the trade market. I think he's more a throw-in piece for a big target than he is anything as a standalone. Just a guess, though.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. Why have a high 5 when you can have a high 10? Well, if somebody approaches you like this versus somebody who's like, hey, who are you drawn to? You're drawn to the person who's doubly excited. Yellow Dog's using that same excitement for the high 10 double hazy IPA. It's got a lot of pop to it. Vibrant hop elixir, turned up a notch for the bigger flavor. It's a beer made for those who want to go all in.
Yes, have these at home in the safety of your home.
High 10 double hazy IPA. Woo, boy. Mm-hmm. It's a long day this weekend. All the days this weekend, the long days.
Mm-hmm.
Have a high 10, have a nap, have another high 10. There you go.
I like it. Okay, where are we at? Oh, yes, McJesus. So the Oilers had their locker cleanout day. Mm-hmm. We had talked about this story a few times here over the last week.
Sure, there was no panic.
Connor McDavid is going into the final year of his contract, which means he's eligible to sign an extension on July 1st.
Mm-hmm.
He was asked about his future with Edmonton. He talked about how there is unfinished business there with the Oilers and getting it done with that group and his buddy Leon Draisaitl and how all the platitudes you expect from an NHL player when talking about the market in which he works and lives. And then added, with that being said, ultimately I still need to do what's best for me and my family, but of course there's unfinished business. So he bookended it with the unfinished business parts.
It's really hard to take players. Well, the best player in the league seriously when he says, with that being said, I have to look after my family. What's he made? $100 million.
Well, that's what I mean is I wish their agents would tell them this. When you have that sort of money in the bank and you start talking about taking care of my family, the layperson cannot relate to that whatsoever.
No.
It only comes off as pure, unadulterated greed.
Yeah. Well, it comes off as insincere.
That's
too.
right.
It
just sounds like a lie.
Yeah.
Like if you're an agent or a sports agent and you're listening to this, please get that message across.
Don't play the food on the table card.
Exactly, because our feedback channels don't believe you're missing any meals if you're holding out for the $100 million as opposed to the 95. What did Saravelli always say? The only difference is the size of boat you can buy.
Yeah. And even
we're
then,
going to go super yacht, we just going to go yacht. Don't ever use that phrase unless you mean about a family living situation, in which case specify if you can. Right? If he talks about taking care of his family in terms of, I have a parent that needs assistance with a medical matter or a sibling or something or a
wife's career.
Exactly. Yeah. If those are the sorts of considerations, then that's more understandable. Yeah. That's more relatable. I realize if Connor McDavid starts detailing that and talking about any of his family back in Ontario, that really ramps up the paranoia.
Kickstarts the investigation.
So,
Yes.
so maybe just dispense with the "take care of my family" phrase to begin with. Loved this from Vanessa, member of Canucks Twitter, longtime audience member here. I swear if Quinn Hughes ever, with that being said's us, you best believe we'll be digging our own graves. Oh my God. If Quinn transitions with a that being said this year.
Yeah, I mean,
the trade talk will start the very next day. All those who are like, no, hang on to him in the last minute. You never trade a player like this will be like, you got to move him. You got to move him right now.
I'll say this, though. Like, hockey players, especially hockey players, are so cliche ridden, as we know. Like, they barf up stuff in these sorts of question and answers that they don't even mean. It's just like, they just go to the RAM file, if you will, and it just spits out a response. So I don't think, in particular with players, I think management gets held to a higher caliber in terms of higher bar of actual words being said. Players, I don't know that they actually think through the semantics of what they're saying.
No, they don't.
So,
and when they do, it's about the media training they've had.
Yeah.
And what to say and what not to say.
Yeah.
But please, pro athletes these days, especially in the big four leagues, just retire the phrase, take care of my family.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a single person out there who finds that relatable or sincere.
To that end, though, I thought Draisaitl did very well.
Unless it's your first contract, right? Like, unless you're talking about.
I thought Draisaitl did very well.
I thought Draisaitl did very well. Yep.
Obviously I want him here, but I can't speak it.
In fact, I thought that was just about the best answer I have heard from Leon Draisaitl, because I think it was honest. I think it was sincere. I think it was deferential, appropriately, but also had the, he wants to keep the band together.
And as the Edmonton media have said, he can get pissy sometimes.
Yeah.
And he very well could have said, guys, I'm not Connor McDavid. Go ask him. He very well could have just said that.
There was no pissiness whatsoever there. No. And you're right. He was willing to answer on behalf of, in a sensitive manner, with a top teammate. So, no, I thought Draisaitl did exceedingly well there. Connor, not as much. Abby, one win away from lifting a trophy. They beat Charlotte 3-2 in Game 5. They take a 3-1 series lead in the Calder Cup final before 7,100 at Abbey Center. They'll go for the trophy Saturday on home ice. Jonathan Lekkerimäki left in the lineup after returning from healthy scratches in Game 3. Manny stuck with the winning lineup. He scores twice, including the game-winning goal early in the third. His first goal of the game was his first since Game 2 of Round 3 against Colorado. Here's Manny on Lekkerimäki's big game.
To me, that sums up Lecky. The kid has ice in his veins. He doesn't shy away from these big moments, and you could see tonight he had 2 quality looks, and he made them count. So that kind of sums up the type of player that he is when given the opportunity and put in the right spot. He'll make good.
And that's the risk of trading away this guy. We've put him in about 17 trades here on today's show already here, Matt. There's a lot of players that have scored at junior and have feasted on power plays and all that sort of stuff.
Nikolai Goldtopin.
I'll say this about this kid. He does have we've seen him score from distance at the NHL level already, but he's not blessed with huge wheels, but both of the goals he scores last night, he's into space leading the charge on a rush. So he's got capable skating at the very least.
Well, look, I think it's one of two things, and ideally both for Jonathan Lekkerimäki going forward. Number one, the young man just absolutely has to get bigger and stronger. He's rail thin. He's hula hoop and a Cheerio. Speed would be great, because then you're looking at something that's a more complete package. But this summer, he's either got to get bigger, stronger, if he's going to be that NHL regular we talked about, or faster.
But
because if he can add sort of like, if he could be viewed as a good skater by NHL standards and on top of the hands and the shot, then that is getting a lot closer to being a top 6 regular. But at the very least, get a little more robust, a little stiffer, and the shot will still play, and then maybe you work on the speed incrementally.
But either he's getting faster or his anticipation is spot on and reading of the play is so spot on. Both of those plays, he's in behind everybody else. And nobody's closing down on him. So I love, and the fact that he goes 2 for 2 there on those big moments that Manny was talking about. Like, you want a Calder Cup finalist goaltender on the other side in Kakinen to stop one of them. Like, stop one of those shots. And he couldn't. Lekkerimäki makes good on both of them.
Already stopped shots. He stopped 32 of them. He's now got a 1.97 goals against average and a 94.3 save percentage in this series. The Artie party is on. I saw that big group that celebrates the Artie parties at Abbotsford Center in a photo yesterday with play-by-play man Brandon Astle. Love that he's got his own cult cheering section there. And R.C. Baines continues his strong play. 6 goal of the postseason. Ty Mueller added 2 assists. Here's Manny on R.C. stepping up in the final.
He's done an incredible job for us throughout the course of the series, and this series especially, he's found his game in terms of just the execution of all the little things that we expect out of him. He's put in a lot of key situations. He's matched up against top lines. Kills penalties, so it's obviously imperative that he's sound defensively, and then from there he's getting his offensive opportunities and making good when he has the opportunity to do so. So his game he's continuing to find another level, and that's what you want out of guys is at this point of the season to not shy away from the pressure situations and embrace them and persevere through them.
R.C. Baines, if you don't remember, had that horrible goal drought through the early rounds of this postseason.
Which now when you look back on it, seems absolutely inexplainable, especially for a player that has the work ethic that he has. Like the guy hustles.
He scored his first postseason goal in Game 5 against Texas in the last round. Didn't score against Colorado. Didn't score against Coachella Valley. Didn't score against Tucson. I believe it was a 19-game drought.
So weird.
He's now got 6. He's now got 6 in his last 6 games, including 2 2-goal performances when the stakes got highest. And look, I know he's had a couple of cups of coffee and hasn't been able to stick in the NHL. This is still a prospect. This is still a guy who could feature in the Vancouver Canucks future because of some of the things that Manny just said. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be an AHL scorer. He's a scorer in the AHL, particularly last year when he was an all-star. But we're talking about an undrafted CHL player. Like, they don't often turn into NHL scorers. The best part about Arsteve is that he's tailored his game from being a CHL scorer to all the things Manny just said. Mm-hmm. He matches up with the top lines. He kills penalties. He does little things. Awesome springboard for some of these young Canucks, including Surrey's Arsteve Baines.
And he's one of the guys, too, being a Surrey boy, that I think elevates in front of the home crowd. Like, I think this guy wants to be a Vancouver Canuck more than life itself.
Oh, of course.
How
could you not?
So I think you're going to get 100% buy-in and work ethic out of this guy. I hope he can put it together. I hope he gives him something to think about.
Manny continues to state his case for an NHL head coaching job. Dallas continues to be without a head coach.
I forget who I heard say this, but I had this thought independently as well. Of all the players, of all the coaches in the American League, one that is most regarded as not only ready for NHL action, but just regarded as being I's dotted, T's crossed. Mm-hmm. It's the head coach of the Texas Stars.
Yes, Graham.
Neil Graham.
That's right.
So
he's a candidate in Dallas. In fact, Dallas is looking at a couple of in-house candidates. We don't yet know how wide the net is outside of their own org.
I saw Patrick Williams tweeting about this earlier in the AHL. He's a AHL reporter.
Yes.
Like that Neil Graham is just buttoned down. And so is Texas really going to look past the guy that they know so well that has put in such good work for them over the last few and then hire a first-year guy from the Canucks organization?
You're missing one key element to this story.
Please do.
Gallardi sticking it to Aquilini.
I see. The sporting angle.
What's that, Mike?
What kind of team would look past Manny and hire a first-year coach?
Also a first-year coach, though. That's
right there under your noses, Jim, Patrick, Francesco. And he's making things mighty uncomfortable on your choice before he even plays a game, coaches a game. Game 5 goes tomorrow at Abbey Center, where the Canucks are 10-2 in these playoffs, and they have a chance to lift the Calder Cup. Jeff Paterson and company will have post-game coverage on RinkWide, Vancouver. Make sure you tune in. Potentially the last professional hockey game on North American soil in season 24-25. Let's get to our menu.
I really hope they do it, by the way, because
on home ice would matter so much.
An NHL team that wins on the road, they're going to get their party when they come back. I feel like an AHL team that wins on the road, it's hard to get close to the home reaction that you would otherwise get.
Right. You want to win this thing in Abbotsford and have a heck of a party in the Valley on Saturday night, starting in Abbey Center, making its way into town. I think it would be awesome scenes. By all means, if it happens, post your videos to social media, folks. We all want to see it. Today's menu brought to you by Greta. As always, great spot to watch all the games. Great spot to pregame, postgame, whether you're going to the stadium, whether you're going to the arena, and an even better spot for your upcoming party or event. If you are planning a summer sociable, a team-building event, Carmen's going to a team-building event with her office tonight, check out Greta. Great street food, the arcade, hours of fun around there. For more info, book your event, go to gretabar.com. Greta 50 West Cordova, let the games begin. We're going Paterson and then Merrick.
Yep.
Is that right? Jeff Paterson and Jeff Merrick, all the Jeffs we know on Fridays. Coming up, plus some talk on the Lions, the Whitecaps, and a Canadian international, Vancouver Canadians. The streak comes to an end. All of it coming up on the show today. Time now for our Bet365 Bets of the Day, Blake. Because Coach Carlisle played TJ McConnell as much as he did, and particularly with Tyrese Halliburton last night, our boy, the Canadian Andrew Nembhard, didn't have as much opportunity to run the offense.
Assists?
He got 4.
Yeah.
He had 4 at the half, though. I didn't have any more. So I lost my prop bet. Where are you going?
I lost as well because I had predicted a low event draw between Saudi and USA. Got the low event. 1-0 USA. They came up with the victory. They just got past them. Looking towards Canada versus Curacao. Anytime goal scorer for Jonathan David, it's only plus 100. But against Curacao, he's getting one. So double your money, plus 100.
Yeah. I'm looking at the Bombers and Lions tomorrow, where Winnipeg is a 3-point favorite. The total here is 50.5, which isn't huge by CFL standards. But you have a backup quarterback in BC, and you have a Winnipeg quarterback who missed week 1 in Caleros coming back, not to mention Oliveira, the injury there. Put it this way, some good offensive players out of the game, and early in the season, sometimes timing on the offense, the defenses are ahead. Don't often like betting unders, but this one jumped out at me, going under 50.5 in the Lions-Bombers game Saturday at BC Place. The segment, a presentation of Bet365. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game, use code NATION. When doing so, must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Jeff Paterson coming up next. So, Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, July 1st, Canada Day, the Daily Face-Off Live free agency special. That gets going at 8 a.m. Pacific time, everybody. Tyler Yaremchuk with Jeff Merrick, Colby Cohen, Johnny Lazarus, Puckpedia founder Hart Levine to break down all the contractual details. Carter Hutton, Matthew Barnaby, former NHL players. They're all going to be covering free agency from 8 a.m. on July 1st. Through to when we start our show that day, Blake, at the regularly scheduled time of noon Pacific time. So join them, then join us. Every trade, every signing, every what the hell are they thinking moments. And I think there's going to be a lot of those with everybody awash in cap space. Find the Daily Face-Off Live, July 1st, 8 a.m. Pacific, brought to you by the Nation Network. Here's Jeff Paterson, the host of RinkWide Vancouver, was busy at it again last night, and our Canucks reporter. Jeff, how are you?
I'm good. It's heating up around the National Hockey League.
It is.
It's exciting times, obviously. A week out now from the draft and beyond that free agency, and we're starting to see teams sort of position themselves to make some hay, and some teams already making a little bit of hay. So love this time of year.
Yeah, Marchment from Dallas to Seattle for third and fourth round picks. Like, well, that looked pretty good. I think I would have been okay with the Canucks doing that. What says you?
Well, I think the acquiring price, certainly. And look, Dallas can't take on anything with a contract in return, so it was a pure salary dump. I like Mason Marchment, but guys, I was flat out shocked. Like, when I say he was 30 years old,
yeah,
I don't know.
The same,
in my mind,
yeah.
I would have said 25, 26. Totally forget that he spent a couple of years in Florida and broke into the league with Toronto. So maybe that's on me, but when I saw 30-year-old Mason Marchment. So a couple of things on him, like terrific regular season, big body, brings some heft, but he has been a massive playoff disappointment. Not just this past year, but really 3 years where Dallas has been on these runs. And it's not just him. I tie Matt Duchene because he got his deal done in Dallas as well. Like, you look at the Dallas Stars and you think they've got everything. They check off all the boxes. Okay, goaltending maybe was a bit of an issue for Pete DeBoer, but he's not there anymore. I still believe in Jake Ottinger. And then you look at their defense core and you look up front, like they've got everything. They just have to figure out how those guys can get them over the hump in the playoffs. And that's been sort of the downfall there for the Dallas Stars, and Mason Marchment was part of that. Just an underwhelming playoff performance. So that's not to say that he can't go and help Seattle. I think he will. I think in the regular season, again, he brings elements that will help that hockey club. And for that acquiring price, yeah, I think the Vancouver Canucks probably should have been interested, and maybe they kicked some tires as well. Whatever the case, he's off to the Kraken, and the Canucks are going to see him in the regular season, but they're going to be facing him. So, no, I like that deal from Seattle's standpoint, but look, there aren't many perfect players in the National Hockey League, and certainly he's got his warts as well. But I was a little surprised when I was kind of like, and what else? What else did Seattle give up to get him? So for that price, I think that's a pretty solid move on the part of the Kraken.
I think there are more deals like that out there as teams maneuver. And again, we talked about this yesterday. It's not necessarily just the desperate teams like the Dallas Stars who are up against the cap. I think teams want to go shopping. They want to go on a shopping spree, and they want the most cap space available. And I think there are more deals like that out there, and it's up to the Canucks to find it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were probably, I think we all wish there were a few more teams that were right up against it that would probably bring a little more drama in. Basically, everybody was given a 15%, prepaid Visa gift card essentially this year with the salary cap going up, and so that's a bit of a get out of jail free card for a lot of teams. I guess I always look at these deals and I do think like, okay, the Kraken wanted this player and they liked the price, but you are helping the Dallas Stars essentially get their house in order. Like, could they not have made Jim Nill sweat a little bit more here? A week before the draft, 10 days out from free agency. But I guess maybe if the Kraken thought that that's a player they wanted to get their hooks in, they better pounce on the opportunity when it was there. So, yeah, I mean, look, there were a lot of teams that are frustrated, the ones that didn't make the playoffs, the ones that flamed out early, and then you get other teams that didn't go as far as they wanted in the playoffs. Everybody's got their own objectives, and that's sort of what makes this time of year interesting as well, as they all jockey and try to get ahead of things and put themselves in shape to go spending. And yet this isn't necessarily a year where you're going to be able to go all in and solve your problems in free agency. It's a pretty thin pool, getting thinner by the minute, essentially. And, as all roads lead back to the Canucks on a program like this one, it does make you wonder now, like, is Pius Suter going to be able, like, forget a 4. Is there going to be a desperate team that goes completely sideways here on July 1st and throws the bank at him? Can he get something that started with a 5? Because there are just no centers available in free agency. So great year to have the season that he did and a platform year. Again, we've seen him. We know what he can do. We know some of the weaknesses in his game. But whether it's here or elsewhere, there is no doubt Pius Suter is going to get paid in 10 days' time.
Which begs the question, Jeff, should it be the Canucks paying him?
Well, not at a 5. Not at something that starts with a 5.
Okay, 4.5 by 4?
If they're going to improve, then, like, it's not just about bringing Pius Suter and Brock Boeser back. We know that, like, you could bring those guys back, and then they still need to go and be creative, and that's the danger here. But if Pius Suter walks away, like, how do you try to improve down the middle? And now we're hearing these stories and reports that, maybe they're prepared to move forward with Filip Chytil as their second-line center. That would be pretty underwhelming, I think. And most people starting on day 1 of training camp would be holding their breath that this guy got through the first on-ice session at camp, and then, it's day by day with his injury history, even if he has a big offseason here that's allowed him to heal up and feel better about himself. So some real concerns there. I guess when I look at Pius Suter, I don't think of him as a 25-goal scorer, even though he got there. Good for him. Again, the timing was impeccable to be able to take himself to the open market. I still look at him as a 15 to maybe 20-goal scorer. I think last year is going to stand out as the outlier, but he brings an awful lot. We know that he's the defensive conscience on good lines. We know that he has performed in the playoffs. And we also know his role on this penalty kill that really became one of the strengths of the Vancouver Canucks. So in the absence of other better options in free agency, I do wonder if the Canucks are going to have to get a little uncomfortable here. And we know they did that with Dakota Joshua last year, that the asking price was a little richer than they wanted. But in the end, they wanted to get a deal done with the player. I haven't given up all hopes on the Canucks finding a way to bridge the gap here with Pius Suter. I still expect that Brock Boeser is going to test free agency and will play somewhere else next season, but I think there is still a chance that the Canucks realize that, maybe a bit of an overpay, but that's a player that they want to hang on to in Pius Suter.
Yeah, it's potentially depressing for a Canucks fan, I think, to watch all this go down, isn't it? Because there is no easy solution, and you can imagine that the management group is cooking behind the scenes and probably coming to a pretty stark realization, too, that, they're going to have to be one of the few winners here in the trade market or free agency. That it's a big league. There's 31 other teams that are trying to do what you're doing. The chances of the Canucks pulling this off, Jeff, it doesn't look good. The chances are not good. I'm not saying they can't, but if you're just playing the odds, the chances are not good that they make the sufficient moves to make them demonstrably better for next season.
I ask you, like, how many rabbits can you fit in one of those magical top hats, right? Like, generally, I think 1. Like, I don't know how much room there is in the top hat, from the outside. Now, that's magic, right? That's the illusion. Like, maybe there's room for 3. We'll find out on July 1st or 2nd. I'd like to see Patrick Alvin in the top hat, by the way, but that's another story here.
I think he'd wear it well.
But you're right. Like, look, the Edmonton Oilers aren't going anywhere. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are going to be around. Despite what McDavid said the other day, he's going to be an Oiler. And that team has, they may not get back to the Stanley Cup final, but they're going to be good. And they're going to be a challenge in the division. The Vegas Golden Knights are just kind of lurking in the weeds right now. And yet there are a lot of people that think that's where Mitch Marner is ultimately going to wind up. Again, just the reality of the division you play in here. And so if the goal for the Vancouver Canucks is just to squeeze back into the playoffs, they could probably stick handle here through trades and free agency and make that happen. But the stated goal of this management group since it arrived in Vancouver was to build this into a championship contender. And that's where I'm with you, Blake, that just on the outside right now, like, it feels like they're going to have one of the all-time great off seasons to really take it from where they are to where they want to be. And can they accomplish that in one off season? it doesn't have to happen on July 1st and 2nd. Obviously, it can happen through the year. We saw them make substantial trades a year ago in season. But when you look at just the quality of prospects that they've got, and they do have prospects, and obviously their farm team's one win away from winning the Calder Cup. They've got some prospects, but in terms of peddling those prospects to fix solutions right here, right now, yeah, you can probably do some of that, but it's not like this team is stocked with all of these tradable assets. So we know that the 15th overall, it might be part of a package, but on its own, it's not going to bring you what you need in the short term here. So, yeah, I mean, they've got some really heavy lifting to do over the next couple of weeks.
Jim Rutherford, at the end of season media availability, it will be expensive to get the top two center, but it will also be very expensive not to get one. We'll be open to do whatever it takes.
Yeah, so
that's why this report from Drance, that you are already a week before the draft and a week and a half before free agency, turning inward and resigning yourself to maybe having to play Chytil at second line center. I'm not sure how Jim Rutherford explains that going forward.
I don't doubt Drance. I doubt the source, though. I don't think whatever the source is saying, they can't be accurate. There's no way they can actually expect to face the fans, Jeff, with Chytil as the solution.
Right. But I mean, it feels like maybe a softening of the blow a little bit, but ultimately, what is Chytil? He's at 45 points is his career high at this stage. And again, forget the points. It's his availability. And what if he has more injury problems? Then what? And that's this idea that if he had started the year as a third line center, but you had been able to fill in above him, that if he gets hurt, at that point, now, whether it's Teddy Bluger rising for a while, or Ratu, Max Sasson, you can fill that gap. But if you are, banking your plans on a guy who just hasn't been able to stay healthy and whose career at times has been called into question with these injuries, so many red flags. I've lost count already of how many red flags I see in that plan. So I hope that it is just talk at this point, and we'll see if the actions speak differently. But for me, that doesn't seem to jive with what Jim Rutherford said there. And essentially, he laid out that, at that point, and that was the end of the season availability, that they needed a second line center. I can't imagine that the thinking has changed, that their philosophy has changed that much so quickly. But let's see where things go. And again, if you had one of the guys down in Abbotsford that was just lighting it up and looked undeniable as an option, but that hasn't been the case. And so we'll see where things go. But I think they have to do better than Chytil as a second line center if they are going to get to the stated goals of being certainly a playoff team at the very least next season.
They do have that guy in Linus Karlsson who has been lighting it up. But is he an actual National Hockey League centerman? Probably not. He's probably a winger in their eyes. But let's segue to Abby, who gets 2 goals from Jonathan Lekkerimäki. Again, not a center. But it's prompting us to ask if he's going to be a full-time National Hockey Leaguer next season. It's a big leap based on basically 1 game's worth, although he's a half point per game in the playoffs when he's seen action. That's not terrible for a rookie here, Jeff. What are your expectations here?
Yeah, I think I temper my expectations a little. I mean, it was terrific last night, and what a start to the hockey game, and for him to get back in the lineup and make that happen. Now, he got back in the lineup the other night, wasn't as prominent, but to get a goal a minute and 15 seconds in and just set that barn on fire, and that's been such a huge story through this, is the reaction of the home fans and the way that Abbotsford has played at home now, 10-2 on home ice in the playoffs, virtually unbeatable. They've won 5 in a row, and for Lekkerimäki to be a big part of it as sort of the tone setter was massive. I mean, this guy has a God-given ability to finish. The goals themselves, a lot of the other guys did a lot of the work, and that's part of Abbotsford's DNA, but you need somebody that can pull the trigger, and that's what Jonathan Lekkerimäki does. So he did it on both of his goals last night. Like to see it, both of his goals coming at 5-on-5, where we think of him maybe as just this power play merchant, or at least get him back in the lineup so that he could help Abbotsford on the power play. He had power play opportunities, but both of his goals came off the rush 5-on-5. So, a little sort of wrinkle to the way that we've seen him generate some of the offense at both the AHL and NHL levels. he's still a month away from his 21st birthday, so he is young. And this idea that he's going to step in and blow the Canucks away, I'm not sure I can get there. But there is every opportunity based on the lack of finishers, the need for offense, need for help on the power play. There's every opportunity. The path is very clear for him to be a full-time National Hockey Leaguer. But if people are thinking, okay, Brock Boeser is going to skate away, this guy's going to come in and score 25 or 30 next year, yeah, that feels like a long shot. He still has to fill out physically. The other part about having these lengthy playoff runs, guys, we always talk about big summers in Vancouver. Well, the NHL offseason's half over, essentially, for the guys that played for the big league team. There's going to be 2 months. There will be work put in, but this has been a lengthy playoff run that I'm sure has taken a physical toll on a lot of the guys in Abbotsford. They deserve a couple of weeks off at the very least just to, enjoy themselves when the season's done. So really, you're probably looking at about 6 to 8 weeks of an offseason to put in the work. Can he, beef himself up to be an NHL physically, to handle the rigors of the National Hockey League? That's going to remain the question for me. But I do see a path there, absolutely, for him. And I hope that a night like last night does a world of good for his confidence.
I do want to circle back on Rossi for a second. If 15th and a player isn't getting it done, Jeff, did they have to consider moving up the NHL roster to try and make that deal?
Well, we don't know who the player was, right? And so that's the great unknown in all of this. But this is also negotiation a week out from the draft that, that's sort of the starting point, I would imagine, that if the Canucks really are hot and heavy on Marco Rossi, all right, the first foray didn't get it done. They know what Minnesota has told them. And so if the first player X wasn't enough, then yeah, maybe they have to climb the ladder a little higher. And, if you're the Canucks, I hope that you would have started with 15th and the plus would have been one of your lower level prospects, knowing deep down that you're willing to move. I mean, this is negotiation. So that's how I read the situation, that whatever they offered Minnesota wasn't enough to get the deal done now, but there is time here. There is still space. So this is one. I mean, there's just been so many reports linking the Canucks to Marco Rossi that I don't see this as a dead issue just because their initial attempt to get him didn't land the player.
We could see a trophy lifted in this community tomorrow. Jeff, a professional hockey trophy presented and lifted in the province of British Columbia.
So I was thinking to myself that somewhere in either the downtown offices of the Vancouver Canucks or out in Abbotsford, there is somebody whose job is to lay the groundwork for a championship parade. Mm-hmm. Now, you can't get way ahead of yourselves. I mean, that's the ultimate kiss of death, right? But these things don't spring up overnight. There is somebody that has given this an ounce of thought. There has never been a person. I shouldn't say that. I mean, the Canucks have been to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final, so perhaps there were some plans in a drawer somewhere that. Yeah. But yeah, somebody out in Abbotsford right now is thinking about, all right, how are we going to ultimately celebrate? And now they've got to go and get it done on Saturday. But they have played so well in the 2 games at home. The 3-2 final flattered Charlotte. Even though Charlotte outshot the Canucks again, score effects in the third period, they had 16 of their shots in the third. I never felt that the Canucks were in danger last night. Artur Silovs just looked so locked in, making the big saves when he had to. Charlotte had 3 power plays in the first period and wasn't able to score. Now, they finally did score a power play goal, which deserves mention because it's the first time in 12 home games here in the playoffs that Abbotsford has surrendered a power play goal, which is just remarkable. And Silovs has been a huge part of that. Your goalie has to be one of your best penalty killers. But to get the start they did, they built on it when Arshdeep Bains went inside again, and then scored to make it 2-0. That brought the house down out in Abbotsford. Brilliant play, but also I thought really a turning point of that hockey game. It's 1-0 at that point, guys. Both of these goaltenders have been good, certainly early in the series, but in that moment, Charlotte needed a save. They absolutely had to have a save, and while Bains turned the defenseman inside out, he ultimately just flings the puck on net. It goes right through the wickets on Kaapo Kähkönen, and we've seen this throughout the playoffs, that Artur Silovs refuses to blink. The guy at the other end giving up a few too many goals, and the Canucks have had way better goaltending through the first 4 games. If you boil this down, Canucks' best players have elevated and have performed and produced. Charlotte's best skaters haven't, and goaltending has one-sidedly been in the favor of the Abbotsford Canucks. So that's a pretty good combination. It's a good formula for success, and if they can apply it one more time, I think there's every reason to believe that they will be Calder Cup champs on Saturday night.
Pretty cool.
The Stanley Cup has been presented in 2 different Vancouver arenas. The Pacific Coliseum in 82 and then that one in 2011. The Patrick Arena in Victoria, the Stanley Cup was presented there in 1925. And the Vancouver Millionaires, despite playing in Cup finals, it sounds the Denman Arena saw the Stanley Cup presented in 1921. The Millionaires were in another Stanley Cup final, but it was played exclusively in Toronto. They used to do that back then, right?
Center of the universe from the get-go.
In one city. Well, it was only played here in 21, and then it was only played in Toronto in 22. Lastly, Jeff, you asked me how many rabbits fit into a top hat. The answer is it depends what kind of rabbit. But if you're looking at the Netherland dwarf rabbit, I'm thinking you can get a lot of rabbits in that hat. They're only about 8 inches. But if you're talking about the Flemish giant rabbit,
1 maybe
28 inches.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a small human.
Yeah.
And how odd.
That
the
doesn't
Netherlands
sound like
has the dwarf, and then right next door in Belgium, you have the giant rabbits.
Rivalry.
That is surprising because the Netherlands is the tallest population on the planet. So you would think they'd have the tallest bunnies as
They
well.
like small bunnies, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Little bunnies.
I
and
would
then
think a
the
28
Flemish.
inch, like with those ears, that's not for a magician. Like they would poke out the top of the hat, they'd give away the act, the whole bit. So I think you're looking at probably one of those smaller breeds. That would make sense to me, but I'm not a magician, and it's on Patrick Alvin to make some magic happen here over
We'll
the next week or 10
order up a colony of Netherland dwarf rabbits and we'll send it to Rogers Arena. And we'll be watching and listening RinkWide Vancouver Saturday after Game 5 of the Calder Cup final.
Big week.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, guys. Thanks.
So Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center.
And the BZ4X just keeps on grabbing my attention. One was in front of me the other day. I was like, good-looking vehicle. And it can really do everything. In the LE all-wheel drive edition right now, you can get with $5,000 in incentives, 0.99% financing over 36 months. Folks, go take one for a test drive. You'll find out what I'm talking about. A fully electric vehicle, the latest addition to the Toyota electric lineup. It'll keep you away from the pumps, but in the HOV lanes. It's a lot of fun. ShopToyota.ca.
Jeff Merrick is the host of The Sheet here on the Daily Face-Off, the Nation Network, weekdays. Hello. And we've been talking about your draft special a week from today. Get more into that later in the program.
Pierre's on
First
that
of all,
too. Pierre co-host.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah,
Miss Pierre from
say
the
hi to
draft
us.
set.
Say hi to
Yeah,
him.
exactly.
I will.
So the Canucks took a swing at Rossi and were rebuffed with the 15th overall and a player. Yeah. Minnesota wants players, right? They don't want picks. Is that what this amounts to?
As we like to say in the industry, we are out of the green banana business, Mr. Sakaris. We are in the player business right now. Look, they're out of cap prison. They're out of cap hell. You know, they've escaped. Only slightly wounded because I think we were all really impressed at how competitive Minnesota were able to be. Well, they had those two whopper numbers on their salary cap, but they're out of salary cap jail now. They do have an impressive, like one of the most impressive stables of prospects in the entire NHL. Many of which you'll probably see this year. I mean, Steve Boyum's starting with this team. I think it's all safe to say we'll probably see Liam Ogren. Jesper Wallstedt, the netminder, didn't have the best of all possible seasons in the American League last year, but I think he's still sort of ticketed to take Marc-Andre Fleury's place there. But like they have like an impressive array of young players. They're not interested in picks. They're not interested in prospects. They want fully formed, developed players because now, for the first time in years, they can accelerate. And they got nothing. They don't have Jacques Lemaire putting bungee cords on hockey players' pants, pulling them back if they get too deep into the offensive zone. They are going for it. They are skating forward. They don't care about picks and prospects. Those are all available.
My guess is the Canucks offer 15 and sort of burgeoning prospect. And I'll just throw names like Mancini out there, just that level. Yeah. And then they build from there to get to roster players, right? Then they go to Höglander and Joshua. Then they go to Garland. Is that the idea, to try to entice them?
I would imagine so. Like one of the things that I wonder, just like more so from a Minnesota point of view than a Vancouver point of view, but I don't disagree with you, Blake. Like normally that's how these things work. As you well know, I really do wonder about, Marco Rossi and JJ Peterka involved in some type of swap for one another.
Right.
I mean, Peterka wants out. That's, by the way, just a quick aside for all your viewers and listeners, that's a tough one for the Buffalo Sabres. And I'll tell you why. That's Terry Pegula's favorite. One of the favorite players of Terry Pegula, Buffalo Sabres owner. He was very hands-on in the scouting. I believe his daughter was part of that process too. So that one is quite, like, JJ Peterka is quite attached to Terry Pegula from the Buffalo Sabres Buffalo Sabres owners, first day with the new tongue, point of view. Not unlike Zemgus Girgensons. Before, Pegula loved Zemgus Girgensons. Remember, every year, oh yeah, Buffalo's trading Zemgus Girgensons, that's it. And then he gets a 2-year extension. Oh, now they're going to get rid of Girgensons. No, that was because he was Terry Pegula's guy. And Peterka is that guy now. Terry Pegula loves JJ Peterka. Not that I think that it gets in the way of Kevin Adams doing business, but that'll be a tough one for the Sabres when that one finally actualizes, as we suspect it will. But I'm sort of looking, if you're the Minnesota Wild, that's what you're looking at for someone like Marco Rossi.
Few people would complain.
That level of trade.
Few people would complain about having too many centers. In that case, Buffalo would end up with Norris, Thompson, Rossi, McLeod, and then guys like Krebs and Tuck, who can play there in the.
I think they're looking at Kulich as their starting center and having Thompson on the wing. I think in their again, like, we're not even at July 1st here, but I think in their mind, if these are the pieces, then I think it's Kulich in the middle and Thompson on the wing. I believe.
So the Canucks have interest in Peterka. Buffalo looking for a right side defenseman because they anticipate moving Byram in a different deal. So Peterka, is that like a Philip Roenick level trade for Vancouver, or do you think
I like him a lot.
I like collection of younger players or less established gets it done?
Look, man, what's the hardest thing to do in hockey? Score goals.
Right side defenseman.
Yes, I know. You want Aaron Ekblad? He could be available here on July 1st. You might have to compete with teams like Utah and maybe even the team that he plays for right now. But look, like, Peterka scores
Anaheim
goals,
too, apparently.
Anaheim's in on everybody. And by the way, the recruiting there got a lot easier when they hired Joel Quenneville. How do you think they got Kreider to waive? There's Joel Quenneville. Like, all of us, like, right now, Pat Verbeek, I know we're getting sidetracked, but Pat Verbeek in Anaheim is poised to do a lot of things and make a lot of moves. And much like the Minnesota Wild, they're okay with prospects. Now they want to add some players. The pressure is on to start making the playoffs here. This is year 3.5 for Pat Verbeek as the general manager. Not that I'm saying some bloom is off the rose, but if you're the Samueli family, you'd like to see some progress here. Thank you very much. And the playoffs would be a good start. So I expect Anaheim to be in on a lot of deals and a lot of free agents as well. And if you're a player in the NHL, you know, part of your pitch is you can play for Joel Quenneville. That makes it that much easier to recruit. Absolutely, it's going to become that much easier for Anaheim.
Okay, finish your thought on Peterka. I want to come back to Anaheim, though.
So the thing about Peterka is, like, look, he's unhappy in Buffalo, and does want the change of scenery. That's from all the people that I talked to in Buffalo. That seems to be consensus. I don't think that's a big secret. He scores goals. Like, at the end of it, like, he's a really high end a goal scorer here, and he's still super young and just scratching the surface of what he can be. I think that there's going to be. I mean, the conversations I'm sure that Kevin Adams has already had about him, you know, gauging the marketplace. What can I get for him? What are our needs? Those conversations are well underway. And I'm sure in a perfect world, the Buffalo Sabres don't want to let go of him. Like I think that there are some players that they would let go of. Like there's a belief internally that their blue line is too young, and they need some more quality veterans around there. And listen, we expect Bo Byram to be elsewhere. I wonder, just as an aside there, I wonder about the St. Louis Blues with Bo Byram, if there could be a fit there. But the Sabres, like, honestly, this is not something that Kevin Adams wants to do. I think in Kevin Adams' world, this is someone that is theirs. This is a homegrown player. And I don't think that Kevin Adams wants to continue the tradition of watching young, talented players go elsewhere to find success. Say nothing of, again, this is like Terry Pegula's favorite player. Not that it always matters, but this one is always a little bit trickier when the owner has an affinity for a certain player, and that's very much true with JJ Peterka.
Back on the Anaheim front, we talked a little bit about Sir Trevor Zegras yesterday, and somebody got back to us in the on social and pointed out that athletic player poll from a couple of years ago in which he was voted the league's most overrated player. Now, he was alongside a guy like Darnell Nurse, who ended up having a great season this year, and I think proved a lot of doubters wrong, at least for a year.
What do you guess? Seth Jones was on that list.
Yeah, probably too. You're right. So what's the consensus on Zegras? That he's an enigma and something just happened and nobody really knows what? Or were the two 60-point seasons the outliers and he's not that player?
He is, as we all know, loaded with skill, right? He's that guy. Now, injuries have been a complication for Trevor Zegras. And listen, I always wonder what happens to a young player when they start to encounter their first injuries, how much it changes them. And Trevor Zegras has gone through that. I just don't know that Anaheim right now, because I think we've looked at this and said, is Trevor Zegras really a Pat Verbeek style guy?
Probably.
Like you look at Cutter Gauthier and go like, yeah, you know what? Like that's a Pat Verbeek guy. Chris Kreider, yeah, there's a Pat Verbeek guy. The accent on Trevor Zegras is skill. Now you can accuse him and say like, yeah, it's skill, but it's soft skill. I always believe that there's a lot of different, there's room for a lot of different styles of player in your lineup. And listen, Zegras, trains with Chris Kreider. And I think that there's a high-level player in Trevor Zegras, and it's always better when you can find your solutions internally. And I know that everybody has, however many times, had Trevor Zegras traded. Jamie Drysdale goes to the Philadelphia Flyers. His best buddy from the Anaheim Ducks, Trevor Zegras, certainly sure to follow. Everybody's waited for it to happen, and it hasn't, because you can get seduced, and rightfully so, with that style of skill. And if you have enough Kreiders and Gauthiers and Killorns and Terrys around Trevor Zegras, then he doesn't have to be something that he isn't. And to me, this has been one of the takeaways of the Florida Panthers, is that they are exactly who they are. Everybody has a role, and no one tries to do something that they can't. Like if you expect Trevor Zegras to be Chris Kreider, you're gonna walk away going, you know what? There's not a player there in Trevor Zegras. What was the old line? If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll spend its whole life thinking it's an idiot. Like you can't expect Zegras to be anything other than what Trevor Zegras is. And I think there's room for him certainly with the Anaheim Ducks. Probably not on that left side. I mean, that's Kreider, Gauthier, Kreider and Gauthier territory now. But I wonder about him sliding into a third line center role behind Leo Carlsson and Mason McTavish. Long-winded way of saying talented player, Blake, really highly skilled. I don't think Anaheim wants to quit on that.
How concerned would you be if you're the Canucks about the thinning center market with Duchesne and Donato having already re-signed?
Oh boy. John Tavares, Claude Giroux, Radek Faksa. We get to Radek Faksa pretty fast. We get to Nick Cousins pretty fast. You're right. Like it's not great. So you're not going to be able to just go out there and sign your next centerman. Sorry, I shouldn't say it. You can. It's just not going to be anyone that has a big impact on your lineup. I'll tell you what, like, I really like the conversation that you guys had about taking chances. I really, really like that conversation. You know, at the end of it, you know, safe as death. We've all heard that, you know, the John Collins book that Jim Collins book that John Tortorella likes to quote all the time. And if you're going to achieve greatness, or if you want to get out of the situation that you're in, you got to take some swings for the fences, and you got to be okay missing sometimes too. Now, I don't know what the swing would be or how many swings it would take, but I do know that Vancouver getting out of the situation that they're in right now probably isn't going to happen by being safe. It's not. It's not. I know that the element of managing upwards and selling things into your ownership based on logic and common wisdom, etc., makes it easier as a manager, and that is one of the skills that every manager should have. But at the end of it, too, you look at a lot of whether it's draft picks or trades or waiver acquisitions or whatever, a lot of the successful teams are ones you can point at a couple of players and said, they took a chance there. They took a shot at a guy or a couple of guys that every team has passed on. And I'll give you the best example. Instagram. Last night, Brad Marchand. What was he doing? He was thanking all these other teams for quitting on these players. What did he call Gustav Forsling? Mr. Waivers? You know? It's like, these are all things that, like, you take swings, and you can't be scared to take swings for fear of just being criticized. That's why I really enjoyed your conversation, talking about right now Vancouver's in a spot where they got to take chances.
So Thomas Drant's reporting that there is a portion of the Vancouver Canucks that is open to Filip Chytil just being the solution at second line center.
They're already resigning themselves to plan C or D.
So is that a swing? Because you're taking a chance on a guy who hasn't done it yet, or is
you're taking a chance on a guy's health? Like you're taking a chance on a guy's health.
On the shoulder.
He's like, here. The thing about Chytil is, like, when he's healthy, yeah, you're right. Problem solved. And we've seen, like, when Filip Chytil,
but maybe not even private problem solved, because he's nothing more than a 45-point player when healthy. Is that a second line center?
But what's the environment that he was in with the New York Rangers? I mean, he wasn't playing. He wasn't your first line center. Wasn't your second line center. He was playing like third line with the New York Rangers.
Right.
Again, like that would qualify as take a chance. But I just man, when you look at the health history, and especially head health history of Filip Chytil, that one, there's chances and then there's risks, and that one to me looks like a risk. I'll give you a name that I've wondered about by way of trade. Like, I know everyone's like, oh, eventually Jean-Gabriel Pageau is going to be traded by the New York Islanders to make room for Cal Ritchie, and probably around Christmas time we can all see this coming. Here's a name, and again, don't get too excited because it's not a top 6 name, but we just talked about Anaheim. If I was a team out there and I was looking for a bottom 6 center that I think could really help us, who is similar to in style players like, and again, I am not comparing him to these players directly, but more similar than different to centers like Bergeron and Barkov and Hischier, these types of guys. If I'm a team out there, and most specifically Vancouver for this conversation, I'd be trying to get Isaac Lundestrom from the Anaheim Ducks. Solid, two-way guy, hard worker, honest player, defensively responsive, like that guy. That would be, again, just a bottom 6 suggestion, but that would be one of those guys that I'd be looking at. But then again, I say that about a lot of teams. Like, I think a lot of teams are sleeping on Isaac Lundestrom. And if Anaheim, because they're not done, like Anaheim's still going to be bringing in more players. If you can shake loose Isaac Lundestrom, some smart team's going to pick him up.
Speaking of smart teams, did Seattle get a bargain here on Mason Marchment, and or teams like the Canucks who are looking for forward reinforcements? Did they miss out on a relatively low cost ad?
So this one speaks to the reputation of Jim Nill, and this is one of those things. I remember this used to always be true when I talked to people in Nashville. So Jim Nill sends Mason Marchment to another no-tax state. Now, in players in Nashville, a lot of guys would take less to go play with the Nashville Predators when David Poile was there. But players would always say to me, if you're going to do that, make sure you get a no-move clause. Because the last thing you want is to sign a discounted deal and then in a no-tax state and then get moved to a state where there's high tax. Because all of a sudden, now you're surrendering money. And if you look at what Jim Nill did, because I think he had other offers for Mason Marchment, and some of those offers were probably better than what Seattle gave up, like a third and a fourth. I know you're absorbing the salary, but a third and a fourth for Mason Marchment. I think this is Jim Nill doing him a solid. If you look at Jim Nill's background and history, he tries to send players to teams where they'll thrive or teams that they want to go to, because he doesn't want the Dallas Stars to have the reputation of being like, oh, don't sign there because when they give up on you, they'll make it torture for you and they won't send you where you want to go. This is why a lot of players want to go and play for Dallas and play for Jim Nill. He sent Mason Marchment to a team that is in a no-tax state. And that is a real solid for Mason Marchment. But again, that is who Jim Nill is, and that's what Jim Nill wants the Dallas Stars to be. I know there's a lot of markets, like if you're Toronto, for example, like we could have given more. Vancouver, we could have given more. Yeah, but Jim Nill is doing a solid for this player for the reputation of the Dallas Stars.
I hear the no tax part of that, and I get further chilled that it is even a bigger disadvantage for the taxable jurisdiction, the 26.
Listen, players have been saying it for a long time. Again, like I always thought about Ryan Ellis. When Ryan Ellis went from Nashville to Philadelphia, all of a sudden, his paycheck is less. That stings when you're a player, and you're going from a no-tax state to a tax state. You're going from Tennessee to Pennsylvania. That was a tough one for Ryan Ellis.
It's almost like they need an equalization formula, Jeff, in this league.
How about you base your salary cap on net, not gross?
Yeah. Simple fix. But it does sound like they're going to address LTIR exploitation in the next CBA.
Don't know how they're going to do it. I mean, this is going to be wildly creative.
Because we were saying finding the punishment is easy, but finding the fairness, like for the actual injured people, that's the difficult. Like
let me share this with you because we have a very smart listener named Stu in Statistics who sent me a fix.
Okay.
You have to be on the active roster either 48 hours after the trade deadline, 20 games before the end of the season, or the final 10 games of the season. Otherwise, you have to sit out.
For the entirety of the 10 games?
How long do you sit? Because Kane sat one game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's worth it for them to sit for one game. It's worth it. You've got to do it so that it hurts. Like, you could lose a series in 4 games, so to me, that's the magic number.
That's okay.
But he's trying he's trying to account for the legitimately injured players.
Yeah.
So you take the first few games after the deadline, you take the final 10 games of the regular season, and you carve those out and go, if guys are injured there, then that's cool. But if they're injured in between that, that's when you're going to have to account.
From a league point of view, and let's face it, is it Stu and Stats?
Yeah,
is that the name of the jump? Stu and Stats. From a fan's point of view, from a league point of view, yes. I wonder about the Players Association says, well, what about the players that were legitimately injured and are legitimately coming back on the first day?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, legitimately coming back on the first day. I mean, yeah, I allow for the possibility that, yes,
but here's the thing.
End of the regular season and the start of the playoffs, you have 5-6 days, and that is the magic time where the player is cleared to play. I don't dispute
but
that
how many
there will
times
be legitimate situations there. But
how many times have we said, if it were the regular season, this guy would never be playing? We put so much pride on this idea that in the playoffs, everybody just sucks it up. Like by the time 82 games is over, like no one gets out clean. When have you talked to a player that's gotten out clean from a season?
Yep.
Right? Like everyone's got something. And it just accumulates. And we can't wait for the big reveal. This guy played with a collapsed lung and broken ribs. Wow, this is amazing. He played with a broken hand. Look at the sutures on Barkov's hand. For the regular season, he never would have played.
So to answer your questions, I think it's got to be at least 2. I was a little harsher on this earlier in the week, but maybe I get up to 4. Miss between 2 and 4 games based on a formula of how much time they've missed in the race. I don't know.
But here's
but that way is punitive.
But what
like
if it's
that is-
legit? I understand. But again, what if it is legit?
also for the Players Association. Like, how many times and you can totally put yourself in the team's shoes here and the player's shoes. I'm coming off a knee injury. I've been gone for the last 30 games. Yeah, I could probably play the last 2 games. But why would I risk coming back, quote unquote, early when I've got an extra week I could just sit out and jump into game 1?
A, to test it so you're not dropped into the playoffs. B, so that the rest of the league understands you're operating on the up and up.
So if you're really close, then you have to go and do it just so you can play game 1 and risk further injury.
Yeah, well, hey, Stanley Cup playoffs.
Again, like,
man.
I don't know how they're
Guys
going to do
risk
this.
injury.
But the PA is going to have a beef with that.
No, I
They
know.
will.
I understand the PA is going to have a bit.
The PA is going to have a really hard time.
We got to get it fixed. We got to get it fixed. 3 of the last 5 Cup champions have had $9+ million players on LTIR to be able to beef up at the deadline, and then have dropped these guys in game 1 of Stanley Cup playoffs. It is absolutely a loophole, and it is absolutely now
The one area that I was
helpful loophole, if not unnecessary.
I think you guys touched on this recently too, is the idea that Aaron Ekblad gets popped for PEDs, and that comes off the cap.
Hello.
Again, it's a CBA issue. I know this has to be negotiated.
Harsh word, but it's cheating, and you get cap relief for it. Like, in what world? Okay, we're almost out of time, so I got to get to the Jeff Merrick Easter egg. Remind me, because next week you're doing your draft show on Friday. So are we. So we're going to have to get you on earlier in the week. I've got a draft hot take for you.
We do need a quick take. We do need a quick take on the investigation of Kane after the Stanley Cup final. Like, what's the process there? What if they won?
Are Vancouver fans having cap recapture PTSD now?
Yes. No, Jeff. It's not PTSD. It is as real now as on the day they announced it. That fire, that anger still
There's no
burns.
post-trauma. We're in trauma.
Still in trauma.
I hated that with like every
CTSD.
hockey vibe
Current
that I have
trauma.
in my body. I just hated that one. Oh God, did I hate that one?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like, and again, I'm really uncomfortable telling players when they can or when they should have surgery. Like, I'm uncomfortable talking a lot about player injuries and how they should behave during injuries and when they should have a surgery. And because I'm not a doctor, I play one on podcasts every now and then. Just like during lockouts, I pretend to be an actuary and pretend that I know things about pensions and all these things. But it sounds very much like they're trying to figure out whether by having the knee surgery, it delayed the rehab for his other surgeries, his hip surgeries and adductors, essentially, from September. And could he have had that knee surgery at a different time?
They should just strip them of the Clarence Campbell Bowl.
Why didn't they just start the investigation earlier, though? The first sign of, I don't know about this, start it then, rather than when you could have been Stanley Cup champions.
That would have been awkward.
Hey, can I share something? I just heard it. Sean McIndoe had a great idea. Down Goes Brown. Had a really cool idea. I know we want to get to this Easter egg here, but I just want to get your reaction on this. His idea was, if the Florida Panthers, you want to settle the conversation about who the best team in the salary cap era is right now, because right now Florida's in the conversation, as are Tampa, as are Pittsburgh, LA, Chicago, etc. If you want to end it, 3's not going to do it, but 4 is. You win 4 Stanley Cups, the conversation is over. Wow. You are the best team in the salary cap era. So how would you feel if this, like in the sort of spirit, you mentioned, conference championships. How about next year, the Florida Panthers win? They don't touch the cup.
Oh, my God.
We're not here for 3.
Honestly, 3 is enough for me.
We're here for 4.
Oh, my God.
We're here for what the Islanders did from 79 to 83.
Well, this dovetails nicely into the Easter egg.
Oh, boy.
Florida, back-to-back champions.
Yep.
How many NHL organizations have won back-to-back Stanley Cups in the expansion era?
Philadelphia.
So this is
Flyers.
2 plus.
So have one back to.
How many NHL organizations have won back-to-back cups or 2+ cups in a row?
Philadelphia Flyers,
era?
New York
Islanders,
Islanders,
correct.
Edmonton Oilers, Pittsburgh Penguins. I think who was the next after that. Detroit Red Wings did.
Correct. You're at 5.
How many pairs are there?
Well,
How many
Penguins did it
organi-
twice.
No, but
Penguins
Yes,
did
but
it
they only
twice.
counts as once. NHL
Only count-
organizations. Only count
Did you give us the final number?
No, I did not.
Hang on.
I'm asking you for the number.
So Florida
I can
Panthers,
tell you about the repeats, though. or
Tampa
the
Bay
teams that have
Lightning.
done it more. Tampa Bay is another, correct?
Tampa Bay
Florida's
Lightning.
We're at 7.
Montreal in the
Who am I
70s?
missing?
No?
Very good, Blake.
Oh yeah, of
Montreal.
course. God, the four in a row. 8.
That's right. 8.
8.
And it's been achieved 11 times because the Habs did it twice. They won back-to-back in 70-71, and they won their 4 in a row from 76 to 79. Edmonton did it twice, 84-85, 87-88, and Pittsburgh did it twice, 92-93, 17-18.
Of all those teams, to me the most impressive one are the Islanders with Bill Torrey.
By a mile, by a
Because
country
Bill
mile.
Bill Torrey went from this, a blank sheet of paper, to a dynasty.
Yep.
With all due respect to Sam Pollock, etc., Bill Torrey did it from zero, from like that opening training camp in Peterborough before they started with like 1 million players. And one of the players had to be sent home because of extracurriculars involving his wife. There was a legendary story of the
goodness.
opening Islanders
Well-
training camp, ladies and gentlemen. And
Well,
he did it from zero to a dynasty. And
if you're
and then
looking
Bill
for-
Torrey, of course, part of the Florida Panthers for so many years too.
If you're looking for NHL records that will never be broken, 19 consecutive playoff
Yes.
series wins from the New York Islanders is just about as high as Gretzky's points or assists. Plus the teams they beat and the way they beat them. They beat Philadelphia, the remnants of the Broad Street Bullies for the first one.
Yep.
They swept the Oilers in the fourth one, who would go on to be the Cup champion. They won 16 of 19 Stanley Cup Finals games over that 4-year period. Minnesota got 1, Philly got 2, Vancouver and Edmonton didn't get a sniff in 82 or 83.
No Leafs or Canucks on that list, I noticed.
No Leafs or Canucks, although it's crazy. The Leafs won 3 cups in a row in the 60s, Blake.
In the 60s.
In the 60s.
That was supposed to be-
62,
that was supposed to be
63,
the
64.
Early 60s, because the Chicago Blackhawks won it in 61, Eddie Litzenberger's team. And I remember when Chicago was poised to win it in 2010, I said, I should probably go back and look at 61 and, read some of the interviews and read some of the press clippings and see what the guys were talking about back then when they won their last Stanley Cup before 2010. And like to a man, it sounded like in their minds, they were about to win like 5 more. Like you have to have Bobby Hull talking about it, Litzenberger talking about it, Makita talking, and then nothing, feathers, and then that turned into the Maple Leafs winning. Was it 4 Stanley Cups in the 60s?
4 in the 60s, 3 in a row, and the Hawks lost a bunch.
Yep.
Sadly, in that
They thought
era,
they were
they
gonna run
lost
the
in
table.
65. They lost in
How many teams? How many
They
teams
lost
in the league, then, guys?
62. They lost 65, and then they lost in
Let's
How many
call
rounds
that
of the
one-
playoffs?
71 and
How many rounds
73.
of the playoffs?
The
Let's
Habs
call
broke their
that what
hearts.
it is. They had
Okay,
a division
we got a
title.
promo.
It
We've
was a
gone
division
far
title.
Too long. The Sheet Draft Special live Friday, June 27th, 4 p.m. Pacific. Jeff Merrick, Pierre
Thanks,
McGuire
boys.
breaking down the NHL at large.
Look at the hair there.
In the
Oh man,
2025
Used to have good
draft.
friends. Look at this loaf I have now.
Daily
God, it's so bad.
Face-Off YouTube. I'm trying to promote you.
Sorry.
Merrick.
It's there.
Daily Face-Off YouTube channel.
The visuals are there. Just let it speak. Let it breathe.
Just leave the billboard up. Let's talk
Yeah.
Until
about
next week, my friend.
Go to break. Go to break. Thanks, boys. Be good.
Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center, where you extend your game night with a staycation in downtown Vancouver. Book an exclusive Sekeres and Price rate right here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Tell them we sent you. Some blackout date supply based on availability. Well, it was heading to this all week. Jeremiah Masoli is going to start at quarterback for the BC Lions Saturday for their 4 p.m. game at BC Place against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. This is a veteran CFL backup quarterback, somebody they targeted after making the Vernon Adams trade, knowing they would bring Nathan Rourke back. Rourke will not even dress with that oblique injury. Chase Bryce will be your backup quarterback. There are 5 changes on the roster for BC this week. Sione Tuihema returns from his suspension to start at defensive end. Jermaine Jackson, who was a go last week until the warm-up when he suffered an injury and had to be a late scratch, he returns, going to play receiver and return kicks because Stanley Berryhill is out. We had mentioned that he had been limited at practice this week. Kieran Poisson also out at receiver. He's more a special teamer. So Seven McGee, great name, huh? American rookie, going to make his CFL
What number is he
debut.
wearing?
Good question. Give me a moment.
What position is he?
He's a wide receiver. He's wearing 77.
Okay. I like it. I like it.
Gonna guess 7 was unavailable.
Yes.
Who does wear 7 for the BC Lions? Chase Bryce wears 7.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, the quarterback's got number 7.
So is Nathan Rourke ready for June 28th?
That becomes the question now, Blake.
That's 8 days from now.
The issue with an oblique injury, like, there's really not much you can do that doesn't involve your midsection. So, and, he was talking about not being able to put zip on the ball. As soon as they went to any kind of full speed element of practice this week, he was out. Well, I mean, he was out forever at practice outside of the first practice when it was the slower speed stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. This sounds like it could be longer. We'll see what kind of progress he makes this week. Tyler Packer to start at right guard. That is a ratio change because Nathan Rourke is out, so you lose your Canadian quarterback. Whitecaps are targeting Canadian international, one of the best names in Canadian sport. Say it with me, Blake.
Luc de Fougerolles. Rolls off the tongue.
In the next transfer window, that starts July 24th. De Fougerolles, despite the name, English as well, and he's in the Fulham system. He's a center back. He hasn't played much with the first team. He is looking for more professional games. Quote, "It's obviously not fully my decision to make. If Fulham want me around, I'll gladly stay and be around the team, but a loan would be amazing. Just to play 40 professional games, I feel like that's part of the game that maybe I'm missing with the under-21s. It's less competitive. So if I were to go to a League One or a championship team, I think every game would be competitive, and that experience would really put me on a good start." So he did actually mention Vancouver. He's thinking of a
MLS in line with League One and championship teams, certainly, in terms of caliber. So same idea. The question is, where does this fit in for the Whitecaps with 2 tried-and-true center backs already here? Now, they could be thinking we just rely on Ranko Veselinovic too damn much because he plays in every single match. So it could be about that. Could be, a little lack of trust in Bjorn Ege Utvik, who hasn't played a ton this year as well. But it's not 40 games worth if he does come. It would be...
Well, it's midway through the MLS season, so you're looking at 17.
But I mean, even next year, even starting next year, like, is he playing 40 games next year if those 2 other guys are still here? Probably not.
Well, I mean, MLS seasons are only 34.
It's just all the other stuff, too.
Yeah.
But
Well, so yeah, it is a little bit surprising because I think you could argue center back is their strongest position with Veselinovic and Blackman, at least at the starter level.
That's right. They don't have depth that you love. Like, they've got other guys there, but there's not a lot of depth that you love. He would give you depth that you love. The question is, again, is it good for him? Is it proper for his development to play 20 games of MLS?
Or Blake, is this 3 at the back formation we've seen from Jesper Sorensen against Seattle and Columbus, missing all the international players, is that something they like enough that they're looking to go to that more often or full time?
Possible.
Anyways, no, but you love the idea of Canadian internationals playing for the Vancouver Whitecaps, especially a guy who's got the training over there with a big
And he's just been marvelous in this window.
Yeah,
like, he's been so
He's
good.
been one of the young players who have stepped up, along with Nico Sigur, the Burnaby left back playing professionally in Croatia. Canada versus Curacao tomorrow from Houston, Texas.
Because that makes so much sense.
I mean, 24,000 patriotic people in red and white,
Not to mention, man,
providing that soccer atmosphere, that din of noise as the game is going on. And now we're going to a cavernous stadium in Houston, Texas to play before crickets.
and it's a heat wave in Texas right now. They were taking cooling breaks every 20 minutes at the game match I was watching yesterday, the Saudi-US match. And that was the evening match too. And they're still taking all those cooling breaks. Like,
Don't love it.
you're not getting the best soccer match on television either when you're doing all that.
It is not a great TV show in an empty stadium with no noise compared to what you could have if this game's a BC Place or virtually any other Canadian stadium. As for Jesse Marsh, he will miss this game under suspension. Now, we talked about it yesterday. There is now another investigation going on with Concacaf and his behavior Tuesday at BC Place. Christian Jack and Matthew Shinetti doing the reporting there. Apparently, he was told to sit in a specific seat at BC Place by CONCACAF officials and then told he had to move.
Yeah. And we chronicled what I had heard as well about it yesterday. And yeah, he was upset that he had to move. Was there a swear word uttered? Yeah, probably. Was there an elevated voice? Yeah, probably. Is it worthy of an investigation and another possible suspension when it was CONCACAF's error to begin with?
Yes. And if he were further suspended, it would not be for this tournament. It would be for the World Cup. And so
if there's not enough games to run it out.
If there's not enough games to run it out. So when I hear that, Blake, I think a couple of things. Number one, if there is further suspension here, it will only be for a game in this Gold Cup and then be done. Or they're just still pissed off about the poisoning comment that he made about Cruz Azul and the Whitecaps' journey to the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and they're just trying to shake him up. They're just trying to let him know who's boss.
Yep, it could be both of those things, but there's no way they issue a suspension that leaks into the World Cup. Remember,
no way.
They are the host conference for this World Cup. That's a member nation of theirs that is on the up and up in terms of their prowess on the global stage, and they are the host. So you're going to shoot your own member nation in the foot leading into one of the biggest moments of your conference's history.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't see that. Huge effort and a incredibly impressive performance last night from the Indiana Pacers. Their top player, Tyrese Halliburton, has a leg injury. He is gutting it out there, and yet they blow out Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
I mean, I had planned my night around watching that thing, and
I kept on going back to it.
At halftime, I'm like, I think I'm moving on here.
I kept on going back to it, expecting like a 16-1 run by the Thunder that would get me interested, and that run never happened.
No. It was a 22-point game at the half. It was a 30-point game in the third quarter.
Yeah.
That is heroic stuff from Indiana in their final home game of the season to keep this series alive and now force a winner-take-all Game 7 on Sunday. This has been a fun series. Hoping for a closer game in Game 7, like really hope that Indiana can muster enough to keep this tight in the fourth quarter. Oklahoma City's been darn good on its home court, and because of the status of the game, they were able to rest. So, like Gilgeous-Alexander played just 31 minutes last night. Jalen Williams just played 27 minutes because of just how out of hand this score was early. Either way, a couple of Canadians are lifting the Larry O'Brien Trophy on Sunday night, guys. Either the league MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and he's got a chance to win finals MVP as well, to go with the scoring title, and there are very few people in history who have done that. I mean, you stand with Michael Jordan if you do that. And, of course, Lou Dort, the defensive stopper for Oklahoma City. And then on the Indiana side, Andrew Nembhard, who had to play. Well, they used McConnell a fair bit last night. In fact, they used McConnell and Halliburton together, which they don't often do. But Nembhard played 31 minutes last night, scored 17 points. That was second best on the team. And Ben Mathurin, of course, a reserve for Indiana, who provides some scoring off the bench. A couple of them will be NBA champions as for come Sunday night.
US TV hoping that this Game 7 saves it. Nobody's watching this series, apparently.
Yeah,
south of the border.
the ratings have not been great. I mean, it is two pretty small markets.
Yeah. Despite the fact it's been pretty good bad. There's been two bad games that have been blowouts.
Yeah, there've been a couple of
but it's sort of like
stinkers.
like the Stanley Cup final. The good games have been very good.
Yeah.
And then a couple of stinkers thrown in there.
Well, and of course, Indiana, their calling card in these playoffs have been amazing comebacks late in the fourth quarter. Do they have one more in them? And if you're Oklahoma City, you're not feeling safe unless it is a stupid lead in the last few minutes, because Indiana has been able to erase deficits that we have never seen erased before in the NBA
But
playoffs.
the bounce back of the Thunder has generally been very good. When they get smacked in the face, they generally bounce back. I wouldn't be surprised if the Thunder roll in Game 7.
I got to say, I would be happy for either side here, and I know we'll have some Sonics fans going, what do you mean Oklahoma City? Oklahoma City at one point had a young Kevin Durant, a young James Harden, a young Russell Westbrook. They got to the final. They weren't able to win. They had to dismantle that team. They made the great Paul George trade. They brought Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in. It's exceptionally well managed. I mean, Presti is a hell of a GM.
I want the Thunder to finish this because I think it would wrap up one of the best professional sports seasons in Canadian history.
No questions. And
So,
so I'd be very happy for
Yeah.
the two Canadian. And then the Indiana side of things, I mean, that's the Hoosier state, man. Like, that is the state where basketball is in the blood. They have never won an NBA championship. And I like the Canadian angles there as well. Plus, I like their team. They play with pace. They're fun to watch. They never say die. So, anyways, I don't really have a horse in the race. I want to see a good game on Sunday.
Yep.
Vancouver Canadians, they win, but it's not enough. Everett defeats Spokane, wins the first half of the Northwest League by virtue of the tiebreaker over Vancouver.
Crazy.
Aaron Parker and Carter Cunningham each hit 2-run home runs. C sent all 9 to the plate in the 8th inning in a 9-5 win over the Emeralds. 37-29 on the season. They concluded the first half on a 20-3 run. So just to get it down to the final game was exceptional, improbable, unlikely.
It was their second best first half in C's history, and they don't win the first half trophy.
Well, they were 17-26 at one point. I mean, they were left for dead, and they came all the way back. They begin the second half tonight in Eugene. Number 10, Jays prospect Fernando Perez on the hill. Next homestand begins Tuesday versus Tri-City at the Nat. Hipster night on that opening game Tuesday. Post-game fireworks Thursday. Fortis BC Friday nooner. Marvel Superhero Day a week from tomorrow, Saturday, with a comic book giveaway and White Spot Family Fun Sunday. Kids run the bases post-game. Tickets 604-872-5232 or Canadiansbaseball.com.
We should make you go to Marvel night, and we should make you have ketchup on that day, I think.
Superheroes, comic books, and ketchup. 3 of my favorite things. The worry here for the C's is that they've had some guys really perform in the first half. They may get called up.
If they get stolen
to Double-A New Hampshire. One thing that we are going to track in the second half: Victoria's Sam Shaw, infielder, drafted a couple of years ago, having a terrific season with the Dunedin Blue Jays, which is a step below Vancouver. I suspect if Sam keeps this up, we had him on the show after he was drafted. I suspect if Sam keeps this up, he will be promoted to Vancouver, will be playing in his home province here. Poll question results. Whistler Golf Club poll question results from Thursday asked you, if Evander Kane can be acquired for low cost, should the Canucks bring him home? I will say this. There was a visceral reaction to this poll question. 2,400 votes on this thing, and a lot of you wanted to get in on the comments. What did the people say?
People said no.
They said no. What percentage?
74.
76. Very good break price. Aaliyah, longtime audience member. Can we just try not to dive headfirst into more drama? Like, don't go actively searching for it, please. I've had enough of it. I just want to watch hockey next season, not a soap opera. Hear you, Aaliyah. A lot of comments were like that, just none were as articulate as yours. Nick in Perth, only if we're getting paid to take on the contract. I said I think you could get him for a very minimal cost, but perhaps the Oilers will even pay to get him off the team. Now, I don't suspect they'd want to pay a division rival to get him off the team, but maybe there's the world. Frankie says don't help the Oilers out. I get that as well. And the yes side was not very vocal in the comments. The no side far outweighed them there as well. But Robbie said yes, they need some grit.
A lot of people saying that. That was the option was, is
Well,
he the profile of player that you need? And that's what I said in my answer is that's the profile they need. It's just is still maybe not the droid they're actually looking for.
I'm sitting here through the Stanley Cup Finals, and I'm seeing all these comments on our feedback channels. Is like we need rats like Marchand, and we need guys like Bennett who get under the skin of the opposition.
Yep.
Errors and omissions. I asked Rob Williams a question saying it was our Whistler Golf Club poll question. We had not actually
Coronated one, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was incorrect. Anything to self-report?
No. And yes, no.
So he checks that inbox in real time.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with the program. I mean, he knows the segment is coming up, but in real time. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube and wherever.
Just updating it up to the
minute,
second.
Yeah. Follow on social, X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky Live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays, and of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Have a great weekend and keep it local.